What if one act of kindness cost you everything you had, but gave you everything you never knew you needed? Imagine being a single mother, barely holding your life together, racing against time every single morning, only to have one decision, one moment of compassion completely destroy the fragile balance you worked so hard to maintain. Hannah Mitchell never imagined that stopping to help a stranger bleeding on the sidewalk would cost her the job she desperately needed to feed her daughter, but what she didn't know was that the injured man she saved wasn't just any stranger. He was someone whose gratitude would turn her entire world upside down. This is a story about sacrifice, about the cruel ironies of doing the right thing, and about how sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what you were truly meant to have. Stay with me, because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about kindness, consequences, and second chances. Hannah Mitchell woke up to the sound of her alarm blaring at 5:30 in the morning like every other weekday. And just like every other morning, she felt that familiar knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. Before her eyes even opened, she was already running through her mental checklist. Wake up, Lily, get her dressed, make breakfast, pack lunch, drop her at the babysitter's house, then race across town to make it to Vertex Innovations by 8:30. Sharp being late was not an option. Not anymore, Richard. Morrow, her boss, had made that crystal clear the last time she'd arrived 15 minutes past her start time. His words still echoed in her mind. This is your final warning. Hannah, I don't care what your excuse is, next time you're late, you're done. She threw off the covers and padded quietly down the narrow hallway of their small two-bedroom apartment to Lily's room. Her daughter was still asleep, curled up under her favorite unicorn blanket, clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was a baby. Hannah's heart squeezed with love and guilt as she watched her little girl sleep. Lily was only 6 years old, and she deserved so much more than what Hannah could give her. She deserved a mother who wasn't constantly stressed and exhausted. She deserved a father who hadn't walked out on them when she was just 2 years old. She deserved stability, security, and happiness. Instead, she had a mom who was perpetually one paycheck away from disaster. Hannah gently shook Lily's shoulder. Sweetie, time to wake up. We need to get ready. Lily groaned and buried her face deeper into her pillow. 5 more minutes. Mommy Hannah wished she could give her daughter 5 more minutes. Wished she could let her sleep in and wake up naturally without the constant pressure of the clock ticking away. But that wasn't their reality. Not today. Not any day. Come on, baby, we can't be late today. Mommy really needs to get to work on time. Okay. Getting Lily dressed was always an adventure. Her daughter had recently developed very strong opinions about what she wanted to wear, and this morning was no exception. Lily insisted on wearing her pink tutu with her rain boots, even though it was a sunny October morning and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Hannah didn't have the energy to argue, so she let Lily wear what she wanted. After all, there were bigger battles to fight. They made it through breakfast relatively smoothly, except for the moment when Lily knocked over her orange juice and it spilled across the table and onto Hannah's work pants. Hannah closed her eyes and counted to 10, reminding herself that Lily was just a kid and accidents happened. But inside she felt like screaming, because now she had to change, and that meant they were already running 5 minutes behind schedule. By the time they got into Hannah's old beat-up Honda Civic, it was already 7:45. They needed to get to Mrs. Patterson's house by 8, and then Hannah needed to drive 20 minutes across town to make it to work by 8:30. It was going to be tight, but not impossible, as long as traffic cooperated and as long as Mrs. Patterson was ready and waiting like she usually was. Hannah buckled Lily into her car seat and tried to push down the rising panic in her chest. It's going to be fine, she told herself. Everything is going to be fine. The drive to Mrs. Patterson's house took 12 minutes, and with every red light, Hannah felt her anxiety climbing higher. She glanced at the clock on the dashboard. 7:58. They were cutting it close, but they'd make it when they pulled up to Mrs. Patterson's small brick house at 8:03. Hannah felt a surge of relief. They'd made it. Lily would be safe with Mrs. Patterson for the day, and Hannah would get to work on time. Everything was going to be okay. She helped Lily out of the car seat, grabbed her backpack, and took her hand. As they walked up to the front door, Hannah rang the doorbell and waited. There was no answer. He hurried, rang again, and knocked, this time calling out Mrs. Patterson. It's Hannah and Lily. Still nothing. Hannah felt the first real flutter of panic in her stomach. She pulled out her phone and called Mrs. Patterson's number. It rang and rang, but no one picked up. She tried again. Same result. Where was she? Mrs. Patterson was always home, always ready and waiting. She'd been watching Lily for 2 years now, and she'd never once not been there. Hannah checked the time. 8:07. Her heart was pounding now. She tried calling 2 more times, but there was still no answer. Lily tugged on her hand. Mommy, what's wrong? Where's Mrs. Patterson? Hannah forced a smile, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. I don't know, sweetie, but don't worry. We'll figure it out. Hannah's mind was racing through her options. She could try to find another babysitter, but who? Everyone she knew was either at work or lived too far away. She could call in sick, but she'd already used up all her sick days. When Lily had the flu last month, she could take Lily to work with her. But Vertex Innovations had a strict no-children policy, and Richard Morrow would never allow it. She felt trapped, cornered with no good options, and the clock was ticking 8:10. Now she had 20 minutes to get to work, and she was still standing on Mrs. Patterson's doorstep with her 6-year-old daughter, and no plan. Just as Hannah was about to give up and accept that she was going to be late, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Mrs. Patterson. I am so sorry, Hannah. My sister had a fall last night, and I had to drive to Springfield to be with her. I thought I texted you yesterday, but I must have forgotten. I'm so sorry I won't be able to watch Lily today. Hannah stared at the message in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Of all days, she wanted to cry, wanted to scream, wanted to throw her phone across the yard, but instead she took a deep breath and tried to think. Lily was watching her with worried eyes, and Hannah knew she had to hold it together for her daughter's sake. Okay, sweetie, change of plans. You're going to come to work with Mommy today. Won't that be fun? Lily's face lit up. Really? I get to see where you work. Hannah nodded, even though her stomach was churning with dread. Yes, really, but you have to promise to be very quiet and very good. Okay. Lily nodded enthusiastically. I promise, Mommy. They got back in the car, and Hannah drove as fast as she dared toward Vertex Innovations. The traffic was heavier now, and every red light felt like a personal attack from the universe. 8:25, 8:32, 8:37. She was already late, and there was nothing she could do about it when they finally pulled into the parking lot at 8:43. Hannah's hands were shaking. She grabbed Lily's hand and hurried toward the building, rehearsing in her mind what she would say to Richard Morrow. Maybe if she explained the situation, maybe if she promised it would never happen again, maybe he would understand. But deep down, she knew better. Richard Morrow was not a compassionate man. He was all about rules and policies, and he'd already given her a final warning. Hannah was halfway across the parking lot when she saw him, a man lying on the sidewalk just outside the main entrance to the building. At first she thought maybe he'd tripped or stumbled, but as she got closer she realized something was seriously wrong. There was blood on the pavement, and the man wasn't moving. Hannah froze. Her first instinct was to keep walking, to hurry past and get inside before she was even more late than she already was. But then the man groaned and tried to lift his head, and Hannah saw the gash on his forehead, blood streaming down his face, and she knew she couldn't just walk away. Mommy, what's wrong with that man? Lily whispered, her voice frightened. Hannah squeezed her daughter's hand. He's hurt, sweetie. We need to help him. But Mommy, we're already late. I know, baby, but we can't just leave him. She led Lily over to where the man was lying and knelt down beside him, careful to keep Lily behind her. Sir, can you hear me? Are you okay? The man's eyes fluttered open, and he looked up at her with a dazed, confused expression. He tried to speak, but the words came out slurred and jumbled. Hannah pulled out her phone and dialed 911, her hands still shaking. I need an ambulance. There's a man who's been injured outside Vertex Innovations on Industrial Boulevard. He's bleeding from his head and he seems disoriented. Please hurry. The dispatcher assured her that help was on the way and instructed her to keep the man calm and still until the paramedics arrived. Hannah stayed there on the sidewalk, holding the man's hand and talking to him softly, trying to keep him conscious. What's your name? Can you tell me what happened? The man blinked slowly and tried to focus on her face. Ben. My name is Ben. I was mugged. They took my wallet, my phone, everything. Hit me when I tried to fight back. Hannah's heart ached for him. I'm so sorry. That happened to you, but help is coming. Okay, you're going to be fine. Just stay with me. Lily stood close to her mother, watching the man with wide, frightened eyes. Hannah kept one arm around her daughter, trying to shield her from the worst of it, while still doing what she could to help Ben. It felt like an eternity. But finally she heard the wail of sirens in the distance growing louder and louder, until an ambulance pulled up to the curb and 2 paramedics jumped out. They took over immediately, checking Ben's vitals, bandaging his head, and preparing to transport him to the hospital. One of the paramedics turned to Hannah. You probably saved his life, ma'am. If you hadn't stopped to help, who knows how long he would have been lying here. Hannah watched as they loaded Ben onto a stretcher and into the ambulance. He reached out and grabbed her hand before they closed the doors. Thank you, he said, his voice weak but sincere. Thank you for stopping. Hannah nodded, a lump forming in her throat. You're welcome. I hope you feel better soon. Then the ambulance doors closed and they drove away, leaving Hannah and Lily standing alone on the sidewalk. Hannah looked down at her watch and her heart sank. 9:15. She was 45 minutes late. There was no way she could explain this away. No way Richard Morrow would let this slide. She was done. Hannah took Lily's hand and walked slowly toward the building. Her legs felt heavy, like she was walking through water. She knew what was waiting for her inside, and she dreaded it, but she couldn't turn back. Now she had to face the consequences of her choice. When they entered the lobby, the receptionist looked up with surprise. Hannah, you're late. Mr. Morrow has been asking for you. I know, Hannah said quietly. I'll go see him now. Can Lily wait here with you? The receptionist hesitated, but then nodded. Sure, she can sit over there and color. I'll keep an eye on her. Hannah kissed Lily on the forehead and told her to be good. Then she walked down the hallway to Richard Morrow's office. Each step felt like she was walking toward her own execution. She knocked on his door and heard his sharp voice call out, "Come in." She opened the door and stepped inside. Richard Morrow was sitting behind his desk, his face red with anger. He didn't even give her a chance to explain before he started yelling. Where have you been? Do you have any idea what time it is? I told you, Hannah. I told you the last time that if you were late again, you were done, and here you are, nearly an hour late, waltzing in like it's no big deal. Hannah tried to keep her voice steady. Mr. Morrow, I can explain. There was an emergency. A man was injured outside and I had to help him. I called 911 and stayed with him until the ambulance came. I'm sorry I'm late, but I couldn't just leave him there. Richard Morrow's expression didn't soften an inch. I don't care if the president himself was lying on the sidewalk. Hannah, you have responsibilities here. You have a job. And you have been late more times than I can count. You were warned and you ignored that warning. I have no choice but to terminate your employment, effective immediately. Hannah felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. Please, Mr. Morrow, I need this job. I'm a single mother. I have a daughter to support. I promise this won't happen again. Please, just give me one more chance. But Richard Morrow was already shaking his head. I've heard enough excuses from you. Hannah, pack up your desk and leave. The building, you'll receive your final paycheck in the mail. Hannah stood there for a moment, unable to believe this was really happening. Then she turned and walked out of his office. Her vision blurred with tears. She made it back to the lobby where Lily was waiting and somehow managed to keep herself together long enough to collect her daughter and walk out of the building. But once they were back in the car, the tears came hard and fast. Hannah rested her forehead on the steering wheel and sobbed. Lily reached over and patted her mother's arm. Don't cry, Mommy, it's okay. Hannah wiped her eyes and tried to pull herself together, but inside she felt like everything was falling apart. She'd done the right thing. She'd helped someone in need, and now she'd lost her job. How was she going to pay rent? How was she going to buy groceries? How was she going to take care of Lily over the next few days? Hannah tried to stay positive for Lily's sake, but it was hard. She spent hours online applying for jobs, but nothing came through. She made a list of her expenses and realized with growing panic that she had maybe 2 months before she ran out of money. She called her mother, who lived 3 states away. but her mom was on a fixed income and couldn't help financially. She felt more alone than she ever had in her life. The weight of her situation pressed down on her like a physical thing, making it hard to breathe, hard to think, hard to hope. Then on the fourth day after she'd been fired, Hannah received a phone call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello, is this Hannah Mitchell?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, this is Hannah. My name is Ben Crawford. I don't know if you remember me, but you helped me last week when I was injured outside your office building." Hannah's heart skipped a beat. "Of course I remember. Are you okay? I've been worried about you." "I'm fine, thanks to you," Ben said. "And I owe you more than just a thank you. I'd like to meet with you if you're willing. I have something I'd like to discuss." Hannah was confused but curious. "Sure, I can meet when and where." Ben gave her the address of a coffee shop downtown, and they agreed to meet the next morning. Hannah had no idea what Ben wanted to talk about, but she figured she had nothing to lose the next day. She dropped Lily off at a friend's house and drove to the coffee shop. When she walked in, she saw Ben sitting at a corner table. He looked completely different from the injured, bleeding man she'd helped last week. He was dressed in an expensive suit, his hair neatly styled, and he looked healthy and strong. He stood up when he saw her and smiled warmly. "Hannah, thank you for coming. Please sit down." Hannah sat down across from him, feeling suddenly self-conscious in her worn jeans and old sweater. Ben ordered them both coffee and then turned to her with a serious expression. "I want to thank you again for what you did. You didn't have to stop. You didn't have to help me, but you did, and I later found out that helping me cost you your job." Hannah looked down at her hands, embarrassed. "How did you know about that?" "I made some inquiries." Ben said, "I wanted to understand what happened, and when I found out you'd been fired because you were late helping me, I knew I had to do something about it." Hannah shook her head. "It wasn't your fault. I made the choice to stop. I don't regret helping you." "Maybe not," Ben said, "but you shouldn't have lost your job because of it." "So I did some research on Vertex Innovations, and I discovered something interesting. Do you know who owns that company?" Hannah shook her head. "I never really thought about it." Ben leaned back in his chair. "I do. I'm the majority shareholder." Hannah stared at him in shock. "You what?" Ben smiled. "I'm a billionaire, Hannah. I own a lot of companies, including Vertex Innovations, and when I found out that one of my employees had been fired for doing the right thing, for saving my life, I was furious." Hannah didn't know what to say. She felt like she'd fallen into some kind of alternate reality. This couldn't be real. "I spoke with Richard Morrow," Ben continued, "and let's just say he won't be making those kinds of decisions anymore. In fact, he's no longer with the company. I've reinstated you effective immediately with a significant raise and a promotion. You'll be reporting directly to the new director of operations, who I think you'll find much more reasonable than Mr. Morrow." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Are you serious? This isn't some kind of joke." "Completely serious," Ben said. "You deserve this, Hannah. You have integrity, compassion, and courage. Those are qualities I value highly, and I want people like you working for my company. But that's not all. I've also set up a trust fund for your daughter, Lily. It will cover her education expenses all the way through college, and I've arranged for a reliable childcare service to help you, so you never have to worry about being late because of babysitter issues again." Hannah couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They streamed down her face as the weight of the past week, the fear, the anxiety, the desperation finally lifted. "Why are you doing all this for me?" she whispered. "Because you did something for me without expecting anything in return." Ben said, "Because you chose kindness even when it cost you everything. And because the world needs more people like you. Hannah, I can't repay what you did for me, but I can make sure you never regret it." Hannah reached across the table and squeezed Ben's hand. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much." Ben smiled. "You're welcome, and who knows, maybe one day you'll pay it forward and help someone else the way you helped me over the following weeks." Hannah's life transformed in ways she never could have imagined. She returned to Vertex Innovations not as an administrative assistant, but as a project coordinator with a salary that allowed her to move into a better apartment in a safer neighborhood. Lily was thrilled with their new home and even more thrilled with the new childcare arrangement, which meant she got to spend her days with other kids her age doing arts and crafts and going on field trips. Hannah threw herself into her new role at work and discovered that she was good at it. Really good. She had ideas and insights that impressed her new boss. And she quickly earned the respect of her colleagues for the first time in years. She felt like she wasn't just surviving but actually thriving. She and Lily started new traditions like Friday movie nights and Sunday morning pancake breakfasts. The constant stress and fear that had defined Hannah's life for so long began to fade, replaced by a sense of security and hope. Ben stayed in touch, checking in periodically to see how Hannah and Lily were doing. He became something of a mentor to Hannah, offering advice and encouragement as she navigated her new career path, and slowly a genuine friendship developed between them. Hannah learned that Ben's life hadn't been easy either. Despite his wealth, he'd faced his own struggles and losses. And he'd learned the hard way that money couldn't buy the things that really mattered. Kindness, integrity, human connection. Those were the things that gave life meaning. One evening, about 6 months after that fateful day when Hannah had stopped to help Ben, she was putting Lily to bed when her daughter looked up at her with serious eyes. "Mommy, do you remember that day when you helped the man who was hurt and you lost your job?" Hannah nodded. "Of course I remember, sweetie. Why do you ask Lily?" "Thought for a moment I was scared that day. But I'm glad you helped him, even though it was scary. Because now everything is better, isn't it?" Hannah smiled and kissed her daughter's forehead. "Yes, baby. Everything is better. Sometimes doing the right thing is hard, and it might seem like it makes things worse at first, but in the end, good things come to people who are kind and brave." Lily hugged her stuffed rabbit close to her chest. "I want to be kind and brave like you, Mommy." Hannah felt her heart swell with love. "You already are, sweetie, you already are." As Hannah turned off the light and closed Lily's door, she reflected on everything that had happened. It was strange how life worked sometimes, how one moment, one decision could change everything. If she'd walked past Ben that morning, if she'd chosen to prioritize getting to work on time over helping a stranger, her life would be completely different right now. She'd probably still be struggling, still stressed, still one crisis away from disaster, but she'd stopped. She'd helped. And even though it had cost her everything in that moment, it had ultimately given her so much more. Hannah had learned that kindness wasn't always convenient, that doing the right thing sometimes came with a price, but she'd also learned that the universe had a way of balancing things out, that goodness was rewarded, even if not in the ways you expected. She thought about all the single mothers out there who were struggling just like she had been, all the people working multiple jobs and still barely getting by, all the good people who felt invisible and unappreciated. She wished she could help them all the way. Ben had helped her, and then an idea began to form in her mind. What if she could take this second chance she'd been given and use it to help others? Ben had told her to pay it forward, and that's exactly what she would do over the next few months. Hannah started volunteering at a local women's shelter, helping single mothers navigate job searches and childcare issues. She used her own experience to guide them, to give them hope and practical advice. She partnered with Ben to create a scholarship fund for children of single parents, making sure that kids like Lily would have opportunities they might not otherwise have. The more Hannah gave, the more fulfilled she felt. She realized that her struggles hadn't been meaningless. They'd taught her empathy, compassion, and resilience. And now she could use those lessons to make a difference in other people's lives. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving, and she was helping others thrive too. And it all started with one choice, one moment of compassion on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Hannah's story spread throughout Vertex Innovations and beyond, becoming an inspiration to others. Employees at the company started volunteering more, getting involved in their communities and looking for ways to help those in need. The culture of the company began to shift, becoming less about profit margins and quarterly reports, and more about people, about making a positive impact, about doing the right thing, even when it was hard. Richard Morrow's firing had sent a clear message that kindness and integrity mattered more than cold efficiency. Ben watched all of this unfold with quiet satisfaction. He'd built an empire based on shrewd business decisions and calculated risks, but helping Hannah had reminded him of something he'd almost forgotten, that the best investments weren't always financial. Sometimes the best thing you could do with your resources was to change someone's life, to give someone a chance to recognize goodness and reward it. He started looking for other opportunities, to help people who were struggling but doing their best to be good and kind and honest. 1 year after Hannah had stopped to help Ben on that sidewalk, they met for coffee again. This time to celebrate, Ben raised his cup in a toast to Hannah Mitchell, the woman who saved my life and reminded me what really matters. Hannah clinked her cup against his and smiled to second chances and paying it forward. They talked for hours that afternoon, catching up on everything that had happened over the past year. Hannah told Ben about her work at the women's shelter, about the single mothers she'd helped find jobs and childcare, about the scholarship fund that had already helped a dozen kids. Ben listened with genuine interest and pride. "You've done amazing things, Hannah. I knew you would, but I have to ask, do you ever regret it? Do you ever wish you'd just walked past me that morning and kept your job the easy way?" Hannah didn't hesitate for even a second, not for one moment. Yes, it was scary and hard, and I didn't know how things would turn out, but I wouldn't change it. I did the right thing, and that matters more than anything else. Plus, look at where I am now. Look at what I get to do every day. I'm happier than I've ever been. Ben nodded. "I'm glad. And for what it's worth, you've inspired me too. I've started a foundation that helps people who've been fired or let go for doing the right thing. We provide financial support, job placement assistance, whatever they need until they get back on their feet. I call it the Hannah Mitchell Foundation." Hannah's eyes widened. "You didn't." Ben laughed. "I did, and you can't talk me out of it. You started something, Hannah, and it's growing. We're helping people all over the country now, and it's all because you chose kindness over convenience." As they left the coffee shop that day and went their separate ways, Hannah felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the material blessings in her life, but for the journey she'd been on. The struggles, the fear, the uncertainty. All of it had led her here to a place where she could make a real difference. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, exhausted, desperate, barely holding on, and she wished she could go back and tell that woman that everything was going to be okay, that the hard times wouldn't last forever, that goodness would be rewarded. Hannah picked up Lily from school that afternoon, and they walked hand in hand to the park. Lily chattered happily about her day, about the pictures she'd drawn and the games she'd played, and Hannah listened with her full attention, savoring every moment. This was what mattered, these simple, everyday joys, the love between a mother and daughter, the security of knowing they were safe and cared for, the freedom to just be happy. She'd almost lost all of this that day a year ago, but instead she'd gained so much more as the sun began to set and they headed home. Lily looked up at her mother and said, "Mommy, I want to help people like you do when I grow up." Hannah's heart swelled. "You can start now. Sweetie, kindness doesn't have an age limit." Lily thought about that for a moment, then nodded seriously. "Okay, tomorrow at school, I'm going to share my snacks with the new girl. She seems lonely." Hannah smiled. "That's a perfect place to start, baby." And they walked home together through the golden light of the setting sun. Two people who'd learned that the smallest acts of kindness could change everything. Years later, when people asked Hannah about her success, about how she'd gone from struggling single mother to successful businesswoman and philanthropist, she always told them the same story about the day she stopped to help a stranger, about the job she lost, and the life she gained, about the choice between doing what was easy and doing what was right. She told them that kindness always costs something. Sometimes it costs time. Sometimes it costs money. Sometimes it costs opportunities. But whatever the cost, it's always worth paying. Because kindness has a way of coming back to you, multiplied and transformed into blessings you never could have imagined. And she always ended her story the same way. Never walk past someone who needs help. Never prioritize convenience over compassion. Because you never know that one moment of kindness might not just change their life, it might change yours too. Hannah Mitchell had learned that lesson the hard way, but she'd learned it well, and now she spent her life teaching it to others, spreading the message that goodness matters, that integrity matters, that people matter more than policies, and that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what you were always meant to have. The story of Hannah and Ben became something of a legend. At Vertex Innovations and in the business community, at large, it was told and retold as an example of how one person's kindness could create ripples that spread far beyond the initial act. New employees at Vertex Innovations were told the story during orientation, and the company adopted it as part of their core values. People before profit, integrity over expediency, kindness. Always, these weren't just empty words. They were principles that guided every decision from the boardroom to the break room. Hannah never forgot where she came from, and she never took her blessings for granted every morning when she woke up in her comfortable apartment with Lily sleeping safely down the hall. She said a silent prayer of gratitude every time she helped a struggling single mother at the shelter. She remembered what it felt like to be in those shoes, to be desperate and scared and alone, and she did everything in her power to make sure that woman felt seen and valued and supported the way Ben had made her feel. Ben continued to be a part of their lives, attending Lily's school plays and birthday parties, becoming something like an honorary uncle. He never married, never had children of his own, but he poured his love and resources into helping others and into his friendship with Hannah and Lily. He said once that helping Hannah had been the best investment he'd ever made, not because it had earned him money, but because it had earned him something far more valuable, a sense of purpose and a reminder of what it meant to be truly human. As Lily grew older, she never forgot the lessons her mother taught her about kindness and courage. She volunteered at the shelter alongside Hannah, learning to help others with compassion and without judgment. She studied hard, knowing that her education was a gift that had been given to her by a stranger's gratitude and her mother's bravery, and she carried with her always the knowledge that doing the right thing mattered more than anything else, even when it was hard, even when it cost her something, even when it would be easier to look the other way. Hannah's life became a testament to the power of a single choice, the power of stopping when everyone else would keep walking, the power of helping when it would be easier to ignore, the power of kindness in a world that often seemed cold and cruel. She proved that goodness was stronger than hardship, that integrity was more valuable than convenience, and that sometimes the things that seem like disasters in the moment are actually blessings in disguise, preparing us for something better than we ever could have imagined. And so the story of Hannah Mitchell and Ben Crawford lives on, inspiring people to be braver, to be kinder, to be more willing to help even when it costs them something. It reminds us all that we never know when we might be the person lying on the sidewalk needing help, or the person walking by with the power to save someone's life. It challenges us to ask ourselves what kind of person we want to be, what kind of world we want to live in, and what we're willing to sacrifice to make that world a reality. Because in the end, that's what Hannah's story is really about. It's about the choice we all face every single day. The choice between protecting ourselves and helping others, between playing it safe and taking a risk for someone in need, between walking past and stopping to care. And it's about the profound truth that when we choose kindness, when we choose courage, when we choose to do the right thing, even when it costs us everything, we discover that we gain something far more valuable than anything we lost. We gain our humanity. We gain our integrity. We gain the knowledge that when our moment came, when we were tested, we didn't fail. We showed up. We helped. We cared. And that makes all the difference.